Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your Board Game Doctor today. So, in this episode, I'm going to go over my first impressions of ARX, and this is the latest hotness by Cole Worley and Leader Games, art by Kyle Farron. It is a 2024 game, although it was kickstarted a couple of years ago, and a lot has changed with the game. I remember it being talked about back then, but not knowing how much of a hype it was until recently, since backers have received it. It's already in the top 1,000 games of all time. It's on the hotness of the number one hotness as of today. So I was really pumped and excited to try this game out, and I'm excited to talk about it. And I know there are a lot of people who have done, bigger overviews and first impressions who have played this game perhaps a lot more than I have. As you can see, this is a two-player game that I've played with my friend. We're partway through. We're only on chapter 2 now. But it was enough to get a sense of what is going on in this game, and so I just wanted to share my thoughts and display some of the game, what the game looks like on Tabletop Simulator. So, as a quick overview, you tell the narrative of a space opera. There are different factions and people in this game that you play as, and over 5 chapters, you take 6 rounds each, playing trick-taking type cards, and I can show you by being my character here. So you take turns playing a card each turn, and in a trick-taking fashion, you take certain actions based off of these cards and the colors that they comprise to battle each other, move around, build cities, take cards in the form of some of these power cards over here. And whoever has the most points, as tracked here, by the end of 5 chapters wins. Or, I believe, if you pass 33 points in a 2-player game, for example, then that also triggers the end of the game, and whoever has the most wins. So let's go over some gaming highlights. First, the trick-taking aspect of this game. So the crux of this game does rely on how you play these cards, not only for actions, but also to gain the ability to do extra actions as well. So, for example, if I would play like a 5 or a 6 card right here, I would be able to, based off of the number of pips here, take 2 of the actions depicted. If I rotate it here, you'll see I would be able to move or provide influence. So I could do any combination of those if I was the lead player. So if my friend had played a similar card, the same colored card as a 6, he would take the initiative the next round and be able to do more actions after that. The stipulation is if you play cards, if you play the same colored card after the lead player, you only get to, I believe, do 1 of those actions on your card. You could play it face down to copy the abilities mentioned on this lead card, but only 1 of them as well. Or you can sacrifice a card even from your hand to secure yourself the lead the next round, as if it were a trump card that you would play for trick taking. And so there's a lot of tension that revolves around how you play these cards, in which order you play them, how much you sacrifice, and in what order you ultimately want to do them in, thus leading to creative ways and flexible ways to accomplishing what you want to do in ARX, despite the initial tightness of how few actions you are able to do if you are not leading. In addition, if you do lead, you get to declare ambitions, and these are depicted on the bottom right or bottom left of these cards. And these ambitions are kept track of here. And if you declare a certain ambition based off of a card, you will place a marker on that to declare that the scoring opportunity in that particular chapter. And if you have the most resources or the most captives or trophies for Tyrant and Warlord, respectively, at the end of the chapter, you get those points. So another layer added onto the whole trick-taking and card-playing aspect of this game. A lot of these cards will allow you to ultimately get these resources, but I do want to point out that these resources are very limited. And despite the fact that the collection of these resources not only lead you to be able to score for potential ambitions during that chapter, but they are pretty fluid in the fact that you can use them, first of all, as a flexible means of taking actions yourself, as depicted here on your board, but also they are liable to being stolen during battles if someone else is attacking you and attacking a city or what have you that has those resources depicted. And so a lot of the meat of this game, the battling and interaction of this game, is involving these resources and who has them. In higher player counts, 3 and 4 players, these resources will be depleted pretty quickly, supposedly, in my estimation. And so a lot of the race is to get these resources and hold onto them to be able to score big points later on. And then in addition to the trick-taking cards as well as the resources, this game features a lot of your typical 4X type of ambitions, not these ambitions, but the mechanisms of battling. You have dice rolling as well, which is its own thing. You can assign different types of dice when you do battle and pick and choose which combination you would like. So there's a lot of decisions to be made there. But there's also the fact that you have these cards available for not just purchase, you have to take actions to secure them, but you also get to play influence to hopefully gain the right to secure these cards and potentially also take other agents from opposing players as captives, which may score you for the tyrant ambition if needed. But these cards in and of themselves provide some unique abilities during the game. They lay in front of your tableau, offering different benefits that you could utilize, but some of them can be stolen, as depicted here as well. And so there's a good stack of these cards. They're not as widely played or available during the entire game as some other games include, like a Market of Cards are. And so these cards can be very I'm assuming that these cards are very impactful, even though the deck isn't as big as in comparison to some other games. So in addition to this as well, there are more cards and abilities that this game contains, not depicted here. I might throw a picture of that somewhere here as well. But there are leader cards and lore cards, which add setup variability and unique asymmetric powers, respectively, during the game. Those are included in the base game as well. I believe there are 8 leaders and 14 lore cards, and so there are tons of different combinations of leaders and lores that you can combine as well. But ultimately, this is all accumulated under a campaign, and this is a separate expansion that is not also depicted here in front of me, but the campaign allows you to play 3 games back-to-back with different leaders and lores in addition to cards, but also different events and such to make the game feel a lot more intense, a lot more complex. And all of that is intertwined in a more narrative or storytelling arc as well, with some of these cards, and not just from gameplay, but there's some actual story that is depicted with the campaign as well. And so there are plenty of videos out there, and unfortunately I have not played the campaign, and so I can't really speak to that, but that is also a part of this game as well. So when you compare this game to others, you first have to look at Wurley's previous hits and releases from Leader, including Oath and Root. Now, I have played Root a fair bit. I believe I have already talked about Root on this channel and podcast. I have not played Oath, but I am familiar somewhat of how that works. And so I can see a lot of similarities and comparisons among these games, including arcs. There is a lot of asymmetric play, more so in Root. I feel the asymmetry is more, it stands out a lot more than it does in arcs, I believe. And the political and kind of storytelling narrative aspect is very much the forefront in Oath as well. It's more political, more more negotiations are woven into the story as well. And so I feel like Root, both Oath and Root are very replayable, in the sense that Root, you have a lot of opportunities to really dive into a certain faction, the way that they play, which is very different from any other faction, and really mastering that faction can take a lot of time, and then you can also spend that time and repetitious play using other factions as well. And then Oath, since it is more of a narrative, repeated plays often bring out an interesting thread of the game that you start to, or the story that you start to tell through the game. And Arcs kind of is a mixture of a lot of those. I think a lot of these cards, especially the campaign aspect of this game, focuses its storytelling, uh, pursuit in a more condensed way that you can pull out in one day versus multiple and multiple nights of or gaming sessions of Oath to tell a story. You can accomplish that in a relatively shorter amount of time if you are playing Arcs. The asymmetry, once again, I do need to explore some of the leaders that this game has to offer in terms of how asymmetric the factions are when you do play Arcs. But I think that sort of difference in how you approach the game can be seen by utilizing those leaders and lores as well. And so, all of that to say that Arcs does feel like it contains a lot of the DNA that is found in Root and Oath and perhaps other Whirly games as well, but in a way that it feels a little bit more streamlined and elegant in Arcs. Outside of leader games in particular, there are other similarities with PAX games, including Cole Wehrle's PAX Pamir, 2nd edition, as well as PAX Renaissance, which is not by Whirly. And, those games really revolve a lot around card play and creating an engine with those cards in front of your tableau to interact with a main shared board. And in this game, you do have the opportunity, in Arcs, you have the opportunity to utilize some of these cards, more so with the leaders and lores. But I feel like the card play, the interaction that you have with the market is different in those PAX games. It's, I think, a little bit more in the forefront in comparison to this game, where I feel like these cards add a lot of spice to what you're trying to accomplish, mainly, by trying to score ambitions. These mostly try to just nudge you in the right direction to accomplish that, whereas you need to play those cards right and purchase the right cards at the right time to build a viable engine and tableau in front of you in PAX games to interact appropriately on the shared board as well. But so in addition to that, too, there are other minor similarities that I found in games. One is the more storytelling / Euro mechanistic style games that Ryan Lockett has put out, such as Sleeping Gods and Near and Far. I feel like that combination of trying to tell a story and a narrative, not just through mechanisms, but also through text and circumstance, is a big similarity that I find in games like Arcs. And so I think if you like those games from Lockett, you would like Arcs as well. And then the campaign itself is very reminiscent of Uwe Rosenberg's Newsfjord, which does include a solo campaign that I'm sure you could do this multiplayer as well, but there is a set in stone rule or procedure that you can follow in Newsfjord to play 3 games back to back and combine those scores into a sort of a ranking, basically based off of how well you perform throughout those 3 games. And so you can do that and have a campaign style experience with a very much Euro style game in Newsfjord. Moving on to the peer review, so looking at the multitude of comments, there are a lot of comments on this game on Board Game Geek with both praise and concerns. For praise, as this is a Cole Wehrle game, this game is very surprisingly easy to teach, coming from games like Oath, which is very much nuanced, and Root, which is a difficult teach because on top of the base rules, you're also teaching the faction-specific requirements that you need to know. And so for those who are maybe perhaps more casual to gaming or not familiar with the types of games that Whirly does, it can be quite a teach. In comparison, Arcs is a lot easier to teach. It's a more streamlined experience with the trick-taking aspect and the way that you score points and utilize actions in this game. A lot of people really enjoyed that. The storytelling and narrative aspect that is conglomerated with the mechanisms is very well done as well in Arcs, according to people. The flexibility, and so this is both a praise and concern. I think the way that you can be flexible in taking your actions with the trick taking is very much appreciated, and accomplishing a goal in a multitude of ways, perhaps some of those ways being harder than others and requiring more effort, but the ability to creatively arrive at your destination is one thing that ARX does in spades, and a lot of people really enjoy that. Overall, the comments of how this game comes together as a whole, not just the base game, but including the module of Leaders and Lores and the campaign expansion, people are throwing out the phrases of, this is the perfect game, this is the best game of 2024 already, this is a modern classic, etc. That was found everywhere. However, there are some concerns, and some people perhaps made some comments when this game was earlier in development, but a lot of these comments were pretty recent as well. There is the luck of the draw that you must deal with the deck of trick-taking cards that you were assigned. If you're assigned a quote-unquote bad hand, you have a much harder time overcoming that to accomplish what you want to. And that can lead to some frustration, especially with a longer game, as this game, a session may take about 2 to 3 hours, depending on how familiar you are with this game and what modules you're using. While it is easy to teach and play, it's very hard to master, and so for those who want to play this game, it's probably not going to unlock its full potential if you play a certain game once or twice a year, for example, compared to having a dedicated group playing this game over and over again, unraveling the secrets and the nuances that this game has to provide. So that is a praise in and of itself, but could be a concern to certain folks who might play this game. It's not really a 4X, according to some people. It doesn't have the typical mechanisms and approach that a 4X game has. It very much leans into the trick-taking mechanism and the abstract nature of the board itself, for example, in how it plays out. And so some people might be disappointed that it is not a true, tried and true 4X game. It's mostly just a sci-fi themed Euro game with some elements that do share with 4X in, typical nature. And yeah, once again, the restrictive nature of the trick-taking, the fact that if you do not lead, you're very limited in what you can do for actions, can be frustrating as well. So going into my first impressions of this game, so first of all, like I said, I have played Root, and I have played that more than 10 times. I really enjoy Root. I think I enjoy the concept of Root a little bit more than I enjoy the game of Root itself. It is a game that I am very interested in playing more of, but I do see the requirement of really diving into the game to make it, shine through and through. It's a game that you have to dedicate a lot of time to, and I enjoy games that offer that ability, such as Agricola, such as Through the Ages, Terra Mystica. All of these games, are very strategic and very time dependent to finding success. It takes a lot of repetitions to really get your groove in those games, and I think ARX fits that as well. And so I'm automatically very interested and enjoyed the concept of what ARX has to offer, which is very similar with Root. But I will say that I think I like ARX more than Root because of the mechanisms and just how this game plays. Even though I've only played the base game without the Leaders and Lores, I can see where that would take this game. And because I do have a good understanding of how this game plays, since it was relatively easy to teach, I was able to teach my friend who doesn't play games of this caliber very often. We were able to play, at least a round of it, starting relatively late at night as well. I was able to teach the game and get a round in before we called it good, and we will probably continue this game, but I really enjoyed how streamlined the teach and the play was. And so for someone who has enjoyed Whirly games, even though they are a little bit more opaque, I have tried Pax Pamir a couple of times. I can also respect that design, but I'm also a little scared to kind of dive into it. I feel like there are other games that I would rather dedicate my time to really understanding and mastering. So I think ARX would, for me personally, take more precedence than those other games based off of how easy it is to play and teach. So I can have those rules in the back of my mind and really think about this game strategically, and the flexibility of the trick taking. Yes, it can be frustrating. I think it is more frustrating with 3 or 4 players. I think this game will shine most at 3 players because of the balance of interaction as well as the restriction. It isn't as restrictive, I think, as it would be for 4 players to utilize the trick-taking aspect of that game. But I really respect the hype and everything that this game has to offer. I would love to dive into this game even more. And I think a testament of how great that was is that I was thinking about this game the day, or 2 days after I played it, thinking about what happened with even our just first chapter here. We had a couple of battles here, for example. I wanted to kind of mess around and see what the combat was like, and it was just really exciting to roll dice, and I like the flexibility of these dice as well, being able to choose what kind of dice you roll to kind of target what you want to accomplish with your battle, whether it's more battle the city, play it defensively, or to kind of do a high risk high reward type of approach with assault dice, the red dice here. And so yeah, it was really fun, and I thought about even without even thinking about it, in the back of my mind I was kind of thinking about the narrative that the story was telling, and I think that would be even better with the leaders and lores, as far as being able to kind of have a scaffolding to tell a story around what mechanically happened throughout the game. But yeah, so I really enjoyed Arcs. I look forward to playing this. I think I like this game more. I would like this game more than Root, but time will tell if that is true or not. But I do believe in the hype that this game has had, and can't wait to see where it goes. So that's my first impression of Arcs. Thank you for sticking around with me, and hope that you schedule an appointment with me real soon. Take care.